what can we do, Debbie? These people are suffering. I tried to make up this 5-point plan. Then we'll repeat that today just briefly. If you didn't watch last week's show, gotta watch it. Must see TV. Anyway, the 5 things, watch those 5 things. We're going to go over them briefly today, but mostly we're going to be answering heartfelt questions that people have sent in. And I'm going to start by introducing Debbie Fox, what you would advise for people who have husbands who are spiritually challenged and they're kind of suffering by themselves. Do you have any off the cuff advice you'd like to start with?
I'd say just simply, it is, as Leah has said over and over, it's a struggle and it's very painful. I think people get married and their heart is set for life to be in a certain way, and there's many, many times that for whatever reason, our lives take a turn. There's a new reality in our life. And this is one, and it involves personal loss for people, and it involves disappointment, and puts people into a situation where you really don't know what to do. So I think that I have listened to, I've read the 5 steps that Leah's going to talk about and review. I think they're all important. I think in a certain way, one of the things you really have to look at is, why did you marry your husband? Who is he as a person? What did you love about him? How did you connect to him? Was it only religiously? Or did you enjoy doing things with him? Did you enjoy his humor? Did you enjoy being with him? Did you enjoy going out to eat with him? Do you like cooking with him? Do you like reading books with him? What can you do to reconnect in so many other ways to keep that relationship alive? And then as Leah talks, we'll go into some of the other things about maybe how a therapist can help, or maybe how just a mentor can help. But I would say keeping the emotional connection and keeping in your own heart who he is. He's not only an Orthodox Jew. Who is he? And how can you keep that connection? How can you remember those other pieces and keep those pieces of your relationship alive?
Yeah, so somebody had actually, Debbie had one of our viewers had asked that for sure we all want to remember what it was like at the beginning. But when you get to a point where there's so much tension, and there's so much tension specifically with this topic, and then when you bring in children into the mix, so now it's like, what about what my kids are going to see, and what's going to happen as they grow older, and there's so much tension now that it's like it blurs everything else. You don't even see him anymore for who he was at the beginning. All you see is this tension. So how do you get past that?
So what I would say is you have to look at, where did that tension to that degree come from? Some of that may be because of his changed values, but some of that may be because of our reaction to his changed values, which might create tremendous tension. Now, I understand that. We get married in our mind, there's an agreement, just like we get married and we expect to be married. We get married and we expect that we're going to stay an Orthodox couple. We do. But things can happen. And I think something to keep in mind is, if they're becoming rebellious, that's one issue. If they've lost their faith, it's another.
Oh, can you explain the difference? That's very interesting.
Yes,
so
interesting.
It's very difficult when someone has become rebellious. If they want to get involved in drugs, or they want to get involved in inappropriate activities, and this is what they want to do. They're tired of structure in their life and they want to act out. That's very difficult.
It's kind of like a latent teenage thing. Where does that come from?
And sometimes that does.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah,
right. And sometimes that's the situation. What I'm finding more and more that I'm hearing about is men who have in certain ways lost their faith. They don't believe anymore, or they don't believe in some of the structure and the observance, and it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. And if that's the case, can we try and understand that that's the problem, is that they have lost faith. They're not being rebellious, they've lost faith. And how can we
how would you treat either one? Like if somebody was rebellious,
well, how would you differentiate it? Meaning, for a wife, how would she know if her husband is just losing faith, or if her husband is just rebelling against even all his upbringing of him being stifled?
But even if she was able to, even if the wife was able to figure that out, what what difference would
it make for her?
What
Okay.
would make for her? Like, in other words, is it like would her actions be different if he was rebellious versus her actions being different if he lost faith?
The likelihood is they would, because it is much more difficult when they're acting out to act out, meaning they're acting out their maybe anger at their past. They're doing things, so to speak, lahachas, on purpose. It is very difficult. It is got to be handled, I think, very differently than when someone is saying, I don't want to publicly do anything to embarrass you. I don't want to, but I don't believe anymore. I'm not going to show because
I want answers. I want advice. Like, the person is rebellious. What can the wife do? Let's just deal with that one now, because then we'll deal with the other one after. But the husband's rebellious. Like, and not only, I'm sure, it's not just he's taking it out on religion. It's he's rebellious about, I don't want to do the carpool. I mean, I don't know.
he probably is rebellious about much more serious things than the carpool. Meaning, if he's rebellious, he may be getting into a lot of trouble in his life, doing things that are very dangerous for him. That's the likelihood of it is if he's rebellious, right? That he's rebelling against it all.
What can the wife do?
That's a very difficult situation, and I think that she does need her own therapy and support.
Right.
And if there's any way she can encourage him to go work it out, lovingly encourage him to go work it out, not
and
you
Dobbin,
haul yourself into therapy or else
That's right.
if you don't get into therapy, I'm out. But I'm concerned and I'm worried. These behaviors are not like the man I married. And I see them. I see you're acting out on them. I see that something in my mind is causing you pain. Something is not working right. I don't want you to get into deeper trouble.
Right.
I don't want you to go down that route. Not because I'm looking for my perfect little life, but because I'm worried about you.
Right, make that the focus. I care about
that's
you
nice.
instead of you need to go to therapy so you can be from again. But like,
right.
I care about you on a holistic level, and I want things to be good with you.
Right.
I have now that we've got you live in the flesh. I actually, every subject, I always have people say, I just can't get my husband to therapy. I'm sorry, Leah. I've tried everything. We went once, twice. He hates the person. It didn't work. He doesn't believe in it. He whatever. I mean, that's like this common thing. I hear all the time. So I have turned into saying, even if you don't get there, he doesn't get therapy, you get therapy. Maybe the therapist will help you figure out how to get him to therapy. Do you have any ideas on that?
In a certain way, I agree. I mean, the idea of shoving him into therapy most likely will not work, because if he's already rebelling, he's going to rebel against that too. Right. So if what you can do is address his pain and your worry about him, your worry about where some of these behaviors are leading him, and it's a softer way of looking at it and saying, I'd love for you to get some help with that. Let's see if we can find someone that you can identify with. They may say, I'm not going to anybody Orthodox, so don't. Mm-hmm. There are other good people. Professionals are professionals. They know what rebellious behavior is. Right. So they know what acting out behavior is. They know when someone's in pain underneath. So I think that trying to help them find a therapist that they can relate to and letting them know it's important to you that the therapist is someone that they can relate to. It has to be someone you can trust, and obviously, there are good therapists and there are therapists that are not as good, and so it has to be someone who's going to lead them into a healthy direction for themselves,
right.
Even if they're not religious. We're talking about acting out behaviors that can be dangerous for them.
Right. So you see, the acting out is the almost not, I don't want to say the extreme, but that's the hardcore. But we're hearing from our viewers and so many of the people that are writing, it's just the faith-based.
Okay,
just
let's get to that
Yeah,
point.
I feel
Okay,
like that's intense, and that is its a whole
whole
we need a
other
whole
ball.
other show.
Yeah, right,
But I feel
right.
like so many of them today,
They're
men
losing
and
faith.
women, are just saying like, "What are we doing? Like, where?
Right.
I
So
didn't
I
have
don't
a
need
strong."
this to be spiritual. I don't need all this.
Right.
Like,
I can
all
be
this extra
spiritual
Or
without
I could be,
this,
or I
you
could
know?
be an amazing human being that's
Exactly.
decent and kind, and I don't have to be necessarily the most religious person. There are amazing
Right.
secular people, there are amazing modern people. I don't have to do all this stuff. And the wife, meanwhile, or vice versa, the husband, they came from a religious home. They want the religious home. They want more, and they don't have that.
So it's so painful because, like you say, we want that and we expect that, and we get married. That's our picture. That's our vision of our future.
It's like you have to grieve a loss a little bit.
And we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to create a new reality, and that new reality has to become our life. And we have to look at how to enhance that. But I really think that, I believe that if you can look at him respectfully and not lose all your respect for him,
Huge.
and let him know that, I see what a good living you bring in for this family. I see how dedicated you are. You're great at what you do. I love the way you are as a father. Thanks for helping out so much with the groceries before, but thanks for, if you can appreciate who he is, I think that you need to let him know that it does hurt. It's fair to be honest. It does hurt that he no longer has the same value as you. It is hurtful. You want him to respect your values while you respect his, to see if you can make that work. In other words, can you look and can you negotiate some by not threatening him and telling him and putting him down, but instead saying, you know that the Orthodox lifestyle is important to me. You know that a Shabbos table is important to me.
Right.
And it's not right now important to you to go to shul in the morning. Okay. I hear that. It makes me sad, but I hear that. I can respect that. That's where you are. Based on the fact that the Shabbos table is important, how can you help me with that? I'll let go of the morning. Whatever you do, as long as if it's not in public in the house, so that the children have this value, I let go of that. That's not my business, and I'll let go of that. But what can you do to help me so that a Shabbos table becomes important? Because you have to be having them try to set it up so that they respect your values and you respect theirs. Right. And the piece that I think that we were talking about the other day that I think is important is, I think a lot of Orthodox people are Orthodox and base a lot on our rituals, but there's less spirituality. We don't have as much spiritual connection. And can you focus less with him on the actual religious stuff? Well, have you waited 4 hours or 3 hours before you had that? Has it been, how many hours has it been?
Oh my gosh,
before,
you're still fleshig.
You're still fleshig, or whatever it may be, exactly what time was Shkia or whatever. Right. Instead of that, focus yourself on creating spiritual experiences, not in a way that he's going to go, oh my gosh, what is this? This is a Shabbaton.
Yeah.
Not
my rabbi. My wife's my rabbi.
Right, my wife's my rabbi, or she's being makarev me, or whatever. But if you can, in a way that's in your heart, bring out to him that which means something to you. Make your Shabbos table less, so to speak, focused. Okay, now we're all going to say our halacha.
Right.
Instead, let the kids bring up their divrei Torah and see if you can have a little conversation about it. Or instead, see if you can have some kind of an English book that you read together at night that has to do with midos and not halacha. Midos is something we can all agree on, that being a good person. Have something. Look, there's tremendous amount of research today on the concept of gratitude. Gratitude research is really showing that gratitude, daily acts of showing gratitude, actually prevent depression.
For sure.
It's incredibly powerful. Sit together, either on Shabbos or you and your husband every night. Sit together, start a gratitude book, buy a journal, and sit together and say, what are we grateful for?
Right.
I'm grateful that you did this. I'm grateful that
you bring us a living and food, and you go to work.
I'm grateful that when I went to when I thought I lost my phone, that I actually found my phone. Right. I'm grateful that, but that's just
little things. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I lost mine at Target last night. But what I'm saying is, do things together that are more spiritual in nature, not necessarily, but bring you together in a positive way. Because what is grateful?
Right.
Who are we grateful to?
Right.
Even if you're not saying
Right,
it,
to God.
who are we grateful
Right, to
to?
God.
We're showing that gratitude to God. And so that's what I would say is, let's find ways that are not overtly, but again, you have to be subtle. They pick up in a minute when we're...
Right. Well, Leah, you actually mentioned that, if you could remind our viewers in the last show about what Debbie was just saying, that when it comes to the ritualistic stuff, like him going to shul or things that are pertaining to him, remember you said that that's like...
Yeah, it's not his.
So if you could
yeah,
just...
okay, so
back.
fine. So yeah, I just will say this thing, and I'm saying this example from last time because a lot of people wrote and said, "Oh, MG," which is you're on a diet, right? You've been on a diet for 2 weeks, and you are so proud of yourself. You walk into the kitchen, and you're like, you know what? I've been fantastic. I'm going to have 2, not 3, but 2 tablespoons of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Okay, you put it out on the counter. Oh yeah. Okay, you put it on, and you're about to eat it, and your husband walks in the door, and he says, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? How could you be eating? You're on a diet, you whatever. Your dresses don't fit you. I'm not buying you any more dresses, whatever." You're going to throttle the guy. You're going to throttle the guy. That's exactly how he feels when you are sitting there saying, it's time to go to show. It's time to go, whatever. That's exactly how he feels. Like he wants to throttle you. Now, he can't say anything. All he will do is shut down.
And withdraw.
And worse, it's not that you did anything. It's not like he stayed in the same place of where he was holding in his spirituality. He took 10 steps back because now he's not going to go. He's not going to do. He's not going to give you the satisfaction. And he's so angry. Just the same as after your husband left the room, you would eat the entire box of ice cream. Okay? Are you kidding me? You are going to tell me what to do and blah, blah, blah. So the point that we have to understand is it's not our business. And I covered last week, and I'm not a rabbi. I don't have big enough shoulders to say this, to understand exactly the ramifications. And I checked it with rabbis. It's not our business, in one sense, what their relationship to God is. And then someone's going to say, "Leah, excuse me, like, isn't my olam haba, is my world to come, isn't it dependent on how much learning my husband's going to do?" And I hear that. But here's the ultimate thing you have to understand. Your olam haba, your place in the world to come, your eternity is valued by how much shalom, how much peace you have in your home. That's your number one thing. Whether he learns, whether he doesn't work on the shalom. Work on the shalom. The other things may or may not ever happen, okay? You work on that first, and you stay out of his business and out of his relationship with God. And it's almost like a black and white thing. I had a woman who was like reminding him every day, and she said, "Well, a lot of times he wants me to remind him." He says, I say, are you going to, the minyan starts in 10 minutes. "Thank you for telling me." And other times I will tell him, and he'll say, "What do you think I don't know?" So I don't know what to do. He wants me to, and he doesn't. Just don't do it. You know that? Just do it. We need t-shirts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Okay? Just don't do it. That she needs to err on the complete opposite pendulum over here. She's telling him everything he needs to do. She's micromanaging him and controlling him. She needs to swing it all the way over here and 0. And wait a sec. We know what this is, right? Anyone who's watched the show. The duct tape. Duct tape. Don't say anything. Even if he says, "I want you to remind me," say, "I have some news for you, sweetie pie. I love you so much. I don't want to be your police anymore. I don't think it's healthy for me. I don't think it's healthy for us. I don't think it's healthy for you. I think part of you, part of you wants me to, and part of you who doesn't. But the part who doesn't is mad at the other part of yourself." This is getting very confusing, but you understand what I'm saying. You don't want me to do this, really. I don't want to be that person. Here's an app. I found an app for you. Use this. Or here's an alarm clock. Buy him one of those little watches that beeps or whatever. I don't want to do it anymore. If a woman stays out of it and zips her lip, that's the best chance for her husband to grow that relationship. Let's go on with questions.
So we
got a lot
actually
coming
have,
up.
this is a big one that a lot of our followers have been asking, is in this area, no one wants to share with anyone else, friends or anyone. They want to put up the perfect facade. My husband is so religious. Oh, he went off to shul even though he's sleeping in bed. Everyone plays the part. And so number one, how does someone get support when they're just afraid to ever talk about it? And number two is the point of the parents. Many, whether it's a man or a woman, they want their parents to see their spouse as this amazing person. And now when they're not doing these things, they're constantly walking on eggshells when they're, when they're going for
Yeah,
holidays.
can you read that lady's question? Because it was so smart.
So she wrote, sometimes I'm dying to tell my parents how awful he is, especially when we're in a bad place. But then I'm always so happy I didn't tell them. It would make them hate him. How do I balance getting their support versus keeping up appearances? By the way, that was such a great, but all I kept, when I was reading that, and that's why I kind of tried to reword it, because as I was reading that, all I'm thinking is, you should never be telling your parents anything negative about your marriage. Isn't that like the rule of marriage? Because if I would share with my mother would, at the end of the day, I'll move on, and my mother will still hate him.
Right.
I don't know. That's just.
My
So I didn't even word it like that. I was more like saying, I was more like moving it to, she doesn't want her parents to think badly of him, even if she doesn't share, just by them seeing a stigma. Exactly.
So, what part of the question are you asking?
So the first one is, where do you get support from if you're just afraid to talk about it to anyone because you want everyone to see your husband in this amazing, in a positive light, and you don't want him to look like the person he's not right now.
And in certain ways, it's his to share,
right?
Not as much yours in terms of his certain things, but you do need support.
Right.
It's your pain,
Exactly.
and you do need support. And I think that Leah had her number 2 here, which I think is really important, which is find a Rebbitzin, find a mentor, someone who's either been through it or someone you find in your life that's wise. Sometimes it was your college teacher, even if it was from many years ago, but it's a relationship you have. Maybe it's a friend, but somebody who you can trust. And, there's a difference between, and we all know it, women who yap and who tell everybody everything, and who, you're standing in the grocery store and say, my husband, try to get him out of bed this morning. What do we, that's yapping.
Yeah.
That's yapping and making facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. That's yapping. That's what that is. That's not helpful. And it doesn't even really bring you support. It just gets stuff out. Right? It doesn't really bring you support. If you have a good friend, a real friend, and that's the one you speak to, especially if it's someone who's wise, who can hear you but not carry grudges and not...
A soul sister. And if you don't have one, ask Hashem to send you one.
That's
it
awesome.
works. First-hand experience.
That's good.
But I think you're right, though. Someone who you can talk to who's not calling you 10 minutes later and saying, did you follow up? Is it okay? How did he this? How did he that? Or did he make it to shul today? And did he this and did he that? You don't want someone on your back like that. You really don't. You want someone who, if you said, I got mad at him because blah, 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 and then you never brought it up again, they also wouldn't bring it up again. That it's fine.
Exactly.
But that if you need support, if you need to let down, if you need that, they're going to encourage you. They're not going to be saying to you, time for a divorce. They're not going to be saying, but they're going to be listening to you, and support's probably more listening than anything else.
What happens if your husband has a rabbi that he's close to? Are you able to
Can you time out before you ask that question? Because with this one, strangely enough, I spoke with a lot of women in the last couple of weeks, and 3, or maybe 4, but 3 of them, their person like that, their sort of mentor or whatever, was their sister. And I thought that was lovely in one way, but then a little scary in the other because it's,
Yeah, so I'm that, by the way, to my sister. My sister's 21 years younger than me. She shares with me everything. And I'm always giving her from having her see his side, always. And it's funny. I sometimes may think to myself internally, oh, gosh, but I always separate from that and say what's best for her and for him, and that's for them to have a very strong...
That's because you're serene.
No, but I'm just saying, I don't know.
I don't know. That seems like a very tall order for a big sister, or even as whatever.
I think what you said is true. It's the soul sister concept. If it happens to be your sister, can be that.
Okay.
You don't think there's any downside, or I guess there's downside, but it's worth it.
I think so. I think that if that happens to be, I don't have a sister, so I don't really know that experience. But I think that if you have that healthy sister, I have a brother like that, who would be someone I would go to. Yeah. I do. Yeah. So I think if it's that healthy soul sister relationship that you feel is healthy for you and encourages you and is looking out for your benefit and not looking to put him down.
Right.
You know, I think we have to really think of something, as you were speaking before, that I don't know, just kept coming to me, was something when they become not from, or less from,
Whatever
whatever the
define it,
word is, we automatically judge them. The thing is that you're judged and you're doing something wrong. I'd stop for a minute and think about, for ourselves, what would it be like not to have God in our lives? It's so lonely a concept.
Yeah.
They're in pain too.
That's
what we have to
what would it
remember.
be like to not believe, to not feel that, turn to Hashem, to not feel like, wow, Hashem, thank you, to not feel like it's going to be okay, to not feel that connection,
that comfort,
the
that-
comfort, the connection, that it would
the
be
bolstering, the hugging, the just like, okay, whatever
Well, and
this
I,
is.
yeah, and I
it's for
feel
the
like
good.
we have the advantage because as women in general, we're more
Right.
like that. We're just so much more tuned spiritually and connected. And it takes our husbands, you know, it's not as simple for them, I think.
But I think if we can understand that, maybe we can look at how to connect a little differently. Maybe we can look a little less judgmentally. We can think about what it's not all fun and games. Sometimes we feel like, well, if they're becoming less frum because they want to play on their phone on Shabbos. I doubt that's why.
Right.
I doubt that's why. So let's think about how we can connect, how we can see what's underneath, how we can not judge. And then if we're not judging them and we're not creating all that stress and we're letting them know we want to understand, will they be more likely to respect where we are too, so that maybe it does create less tension and it does create more harmony at home in a way where we're respected because they want to
Fantastic.
respect
Fantastic.
us and we're respecting them.
Right.
So, for instance, let's say he wants to go out for drinks at night, one Saturday night, and you're going, I'm going into a bar to get a drink? That's what I'm doing? Going into a bar to get a drink? My whole life I've never gone into a bar to get a drink.
Oh, go to a
I'm going
movie.
to play.
You just said it.
I'm
It's
going
not-
to a
yes,
movie.
yes.
I'm going to go
I
play.
wanna hear this.
I'm going to go play pool.
Yes.
I'm going to play pool. I'm going to play pool. Whatever. These are just things I could think
No,
of.
but it's
offhand,
exactly
but-
that. Bar,
and-
movie, pool.
Right, those kinds of things. If there's nothing halachically wrong with it, and you can show him, you know what? Let me try to do this with you. Let
Right.
me do for you in a way that respects you and your interests. We can do this together. Let me just say something. You prefer that he does it with you.
Yes.
Believe me.
At least
Wow.
we're invited. Hey.
Wise
You know,
words.
and so the issue is, what can you do to show him you want to be with him, and that what he's doing, it's not bad. It may not be what this is a new reality.
And that's a segue
Yes.
into
Yeah.
the five.
Yes.
But
Because-
wait, first say hello to Jill, who's saying hi. and
Hi, Jill. Thanks for being here.
joining
Thanks
us,
for
and
being here.
everyone else who joined.
So, and also, we want to get back to your question about your husband's rabbi.
Yeah.
But I want to do the five first.
Yes, but I think
we
you need to break
first-
this up,
hold
yeah,
on,
because
wait
I
a
said,
second,
by the
wait
way,
a
this is very intense and heavy.
Heavy,
now
heavy.
we're going to.
Okay, we're going to lighten
Right,
up.
yeah.
Okay, so
I know,
I'm
I saw
going
Can
to
you
Leah
do it
waiting.
right?
I've
Throw
never done
it,
this right. I always
Land. No, we got
Wait.
it right, I think, last week, but
No,
let's
last
see if we
time
could do
it
it.
hadn't hit the ground. You
Let's
couldn't
go.
see because it was behind you. Okay, ready? Here we go. So I'm doing it over your head. Can I do
Yeah,
it?
go
That's
for
really
it.
why I want
Go.
to. Okay. But you heard that?
Almost. We heard that before. It's okay.
Okay. All right.
Oh my gosh, if everything else worked so easily.
I'm crash challenged. Okay, you're a spiritually challenged husband. I'm a crash challenged host. Okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna quickly go over the five. They're extrapolated much more in the prior things, but I want everybody to have these. These five things are basically I talked with about 6 rabbis and 4 rebbitzins and therapists and etc. to try and come up with what's a plan of action. What can they do? I don't want to just say, oh, here's the problem. Here's an outline. Thank you. Have a nice day. No. What are the take-home points? Okay, number 1, each woman must have a rabbi to guide her. Now, for the thing she said, going to the movies, going to a bar, going to all those things, ask your Rav. You need a Rav to be able
You
to
might
say.
be surprised at the answers you
You
get. Also,
might be surprised,
I
right?
can
Hello.
Just tell you.
Yes. You might be surprised. Like, oh, really? I can do that? So, fine. What is this?
Shalom is important to Hashem, and your Rav knows it, and he will give you the right answers.
You hear that in reverberating in your head, because it's very, very crucial. There's a lot of things, like I was talking to Debbie, and we were talking about how there's halacha, and then there's humras. And the Humra is, okay.
Stringencies.
Thank you. Okay, so needs a rabbi to guide her. Again, in your community, you might feel, it might be hard. You don't want your husband to look bad or whatever it is. Maybe find a different rabbi. But when you're beginning that conversation, and I got like 3 emails saying, thank you for saying that, Leah, which is to start before you tell the rabbi, say, listen, I'm having these issues. I'm afraid to ask you these questions. I'm afraid I'm going to end up having to choose between God and my husband. And I want to do the right thing. I want shalom in my house. So now that the rabbi knows this, when he gives you an answer that you don't like, no, it's fine. You should not go to a bar with your husband or whatever. Say, look, he really wants to go. And I'm afraid if I don't go with him, this is his thing in his head. Once I go, it'll be whatever it is you think, explain it to him. Don't just say, okay, fine, and then go do behind your back, or because then you can't turn to him again, and then you feel like you've got nobody. Fight with a rabbi. Is that okay to say?
That's what I was going to say. You said it. Fight with your rabbi.
Yes. Say, wait a second. If I do that, here's what the consequences are going to be. Are you sure? Or, whatever. And we don't shop for rabbis. We know that you ask the whatever. So, but it has to be somebody who gets it. You wouldn't understand, like a Baal Tshuva who's just becoming religious. If they said, okay, you need to do this and that, no, that's not the right person for you. The right guidance is somebody who says, look, we're on the long-term plan right now. Don't eat shellfish. Don't eat pork. Fine. We'll revisit the other things. It's fine. You're eating out. Fine. Somebody who can guide you. So number 1, find a rabbi. Number 2, we've been talking a lot about having a rebbetzin, a sister, wise sister. Not somebody who's going to make you feel worse about the marriage. If you have one conversation and they say, really? He did that? Well, I wouldn't put up with that kind of thing. That's the wrong person. Read my lips. The wrong person. You need somebody who's going to say, oh, that must have been hard for you, I hear. But did you ever think about the fact that maybe he's having pain himself? Did you ever think about the fact that, that he's not doing it on purpose, that he just doesn't feel the connection to God? Look at his childhood. He went up through, all the great things, but he never really felt it. He just showed up because that was the thing to do. He's got to learn it on himself. He needs space to become appreciative of the life that we have. Whatever it is, you want somebody like that. Okay, number 3. Every person, and this is so clear, and in Mesilas Yesharim, it goes very clearly, the more you think about the future and you plan for the future and you are using strategies in your own mind and turning to people and asking them, what do you think of this? And, the more you plan for the future, the better your life is going to be. You ever have that feeling, people say, oh my gosh, it's Passover again? Oh my, where did the time go?
Right.
That's, if a person is really taking the time for themselves and taking time to analyze and plan their life, that happens much less because you're sort of living, you're not just getting through,
right?
You're living and planning.
You don't get blindsided.
You don't get blindsided.
And
you're thinking about it and what are the contingencies. So I'm just going to go through them. Very crucial. You need to have a plan for the future with your husband. What are you going to do for teaching your kids? What are you going to do about mikvah? What are you going to do about food in the house? What are you going to do about going to restaurants? What are you going to do on Shabbos? What are you going to do on holidays? What are you going to do to encourage our kids? What are you going to do about picking schools for the kids? All of these things, not all at once. Please, let's have a little peace in the house. You need to have conversations so that these things don't blindside you. And all of a sudden, there's like 7 applications for camp, and you're like, there's such tension because the due date for the last spot in that camp is in 48 hours, and now there's a battlefield with your husband. If before Hanukkah, and for those of you who haven't planned your camps, don't get stressed out. I know, but somebody in this room, not saying names, who has already turned over their kitchen for Passover. So I'm not talking about them anymore. Anyway, okay, and they shall remain nameless because I don't want everyone to hate them. But anyway, okay. So, but if before Hanukkah you're looking at camps for the summer, so that you've got plenty of time. Oh, you plan to. Okay, we're gonna go out to dinner. I'm gonna talk about it, and then at the dinner. You get on to other topics and you don't want to bring it up, you're fine because you've got 6 months left to plan. Okay?
There's no urgency.
There's no
That's nice.
Do it when there's no urgency. But these things need to be handled. If your husband has plenty of time and you there's a camp, you want your kid to go to the up the street, it's an Orthodox camp, and he wants them to go to this other, camp at the zoo. fine. Not people who are committed to the same things that you are and that are eating not kosher food, etc. Whatever it is, people have their own choices. Everybody does what they want, but it's just different from what you want. Okay? If you had 2 months to convince him and to lay it out and to tell him your feelings and to give him the options and give him the pros and the cons, you have a pretty good shot. If you have 2 minutes to sign up,
then it's boxing gloves.
it's
and
boxing
going
gloves.
nowhere.
That's right. It's just lace on those boxing gloves.
And I would just interject that these are all important discussions, and they're all going to happen. Every one of them. They're all going to happen. If they feel that every one of these discussions is about they're wrong and they're not religious, and you're trying to convince them that you know what's best for the family, they're not going to be pleasant discussions.
Right.
They're going to be arguments. Well, I want this and you want that, and that's
You're
that.
so right. Tell us how to avoid that.
So-
That would be good, right?
so-
We want to know
before
that.
she
Okay.
even says this, because this is exactly the question that I was going to ask next, so you can answer it at the same time, is we both feel so strongly about our respective religious viewpoints that we realize we can't have a productive discussion about it. But then these super important topics just never get ironed out.
So the issue goes back to what we were talking about before, which is really trying to come to a place of respecting each other so that it really can be a discussion. In
How do
other
you do
words,
that? How
let's
do you
just
do that?
say he says, I want him to go to the zoo camp. I want him to go to the science camp. And I want him to go to Camp Aguda, right? I think then it's okay. Let me hear what is important to you about, rather than saying he's absolutely not going to this zoo camp or whatever, the sports camp there or whatever. Say, let me hear what's important to you about it. Let's talk about the pros and cons of it.
Right.
When you were a child, you would have loved to go to a zoo camp like that, a science camp like that. I can hear that. That might have been a great experience, and maybe this will be a possibility for him. But let's brainstorm it. And even if you can say things like, let's talk, if you do what Leah said, which is talk about it in advance, say, let's talk about it in a couple of stages. We don't have to come to the answer today. But let
good.
me
Tell that to your husband.
understand.
Right.
Today is my day to totally understand your thinking. That's it. And try to do that. It's not just about he's being rebellious, so he's saying science camp at UCLA.
Right. Then
Therefore,
you're making it about your
but why
emotions.
is he saying science camp at UCLA? So try to understand him, but that means being sincere in yourself
And being vulnerable.
and being vulnerable that I really am going to try to understand that. Maybe the next time you discuss it, ask him to try to understand what you're looking for. If all you say is, because that's what all the frum people do, your stand isn't real strong.
You've lost your audience.
Yeah, you've lost your audience. What makes you feel that? I think that he's struggling some and he needs to fit in.
Who, you're saying this about
This-
the kid,
about
the
my
kid.
child,
Yeah.
right. I think he's struggling in certain ways. Camp will give him that opportunity. If he were to go, let's say, to UCLA's science camp and then come back, it's not going to help him fit in as a person. I'm not saying I'm protecting his religion. I'm looking at, and maybe you will. Maybe saying that I'm concerned about him religiously and this is part of it. Maybe that is part of it. What if you were to say, I hear how the science camp would be important to you, that it really would have been important to you as a child and whatever. I'm worried about him having nothing religious all summer. I'm worried about that. How can we work that out? What if he were to say, you know what then? What if we were to get him a chavrusa at night? Or maybe we could, can you talk respectfully? Everything they're saying that's not the typical from line isn't bad. So first it's understand what they're saying and let them know you understand. Agreeing or not isn't the point. I understand what you're looking for. Then let him take time, hopefully in a separate discussion, just to understand what you want. And then go back and forth. And some of it might be, you know what? Let's bring Yankee in and ask him.
Right.
Would you want to go to this science camp? Would you? Or you know what? What would you feel about speaking to his Rebbe about this? I know there are different values, but I'm respecting what you're saying, but these are the things I'm worried about. Or maybe we go to this Rav and we bring the situation, but not you're bad, you're wrong, you're not religious, and I know what's right.
Is it okay to say I hear what you're saying versus I understand what you're saying? Because for me, I'm thinking in my own life, I don't always understand it when my husband explains it to me, and I still don't see that point, even if I try so hard to understand it. But is it okay for me to say to him, I hear what you're saying? Or
Does it help?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Debbie, I'm the one who's always yelling and saying, no, it's my way. So that's... I got to use this technique. I'm just trying to think in my own way.
I think that it depends how he can receive that. Sometimes you can even say what you just said. It's so interesting to me. I can't understand that at all, that need for whatever it may be. You want to go skydiving. I have a fear of heights. I can't fathom that, going skydiving. But I hear that to you it's really important and it would be really exciting to you. I have to admit, to me, I can't feel that, but I can hear that it is to you. I'll go with you and I'll watch you, but I'm not going up there because
I'll push you out of the plane.
but the issue is, even if you can't understand it, I'm going to say we have to try.
Right.
That I can't understand skydiving. I really do have a fear of heights. So our fear of falling. So I can't understand anybody who would want to do that, right? But I can understand that to them it would give them a high.
Okay.
Right,
To me, it wouldn't.
Oh, sorry. I like to use the word appreciate also. Like, I can appreciate that this is important to you. I have things that are important to me that you can't understand completely, and I can appreciate this is important to you.
That's great. Yeah, no, but the other thing...
I'm going to say one thing.
I want to hear what you have to say.
I would leave out the parentheses in that conversation.
Which parentheses?
That you just said. In other words, to say, I can understand and I can appreciate that that's what you want, even if it's not something I would understand but I can appreciate that you understand that. Not sometimes you have to appreciate me in the same conversation. I wouldn't.
No, I would. That's in my head.
Right, that's in your head. I wouldn't include it in the same conversation because it says, I'm doing this for you and you better do it for me.
No, and that tunes it out.
Which then
adds like a...
But you meant it as your bubble in your head. Okay, I got it. But the one other thing that also, and I think this is something that we need to do more of as women, because we're so taught by society that being in control and micromanaging, and we micromanage our whole lives. Like, hello, like, no, the pillow needs to be there.
And
like,
we're good at it.
And we're good at it, okay? So, but the one person and the one is our husband. We cannot micromanage our husband and manage them and control them and whatever. That's what we're learning. Go look at some of the other shows, you'll see. Okay, so not controlling. But there is one thing that is sorely missing, and this is from the business world, and that is called brainstorming. Brainstorming is awesome. It's awesome because, like she was saying, the zoo, and you want this, and why do you want that, and whatever, and say, what are some maybe get a chavrusa. How about, we'll send him to the religious camp, and then every Sunday, as a family, we'll go to the science museum every week.
Or what if he goes to that camp for 2 weeks after, and he goes to a Gouda for 4 weeks, or rather than going 2 months to a Gouda, he does this and he does that, or how about, and those are things we may not really want, but we want our husband and our life and our family, and for him to communicate with us. And
let me go to 3. Okay, is that number 4?
I just want to say one quick point. Before your brainstorming session, make sure, if at all possible, you are both well fed and well rested so that it can stay out of the emotional zone and into the productive conversation.
Yeah, so excellent. Okay, fine. And Google brainstorming because it's a beautiful, it's a way to, it's 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It's like she'll have ideas, I'll have ideas, and then then this idea, then that. You end up with a 5 instead of 1 + 1 equals 2. It equals 5 because you're kind of feeding off each other. So the brainstorming together, it's a bonding tool. It's a way to sort of make, like she said, she's talking about respect, and we talk a lot about that in here, and how crucial to a husband's well-being and ourself also. But a number one way to get respected is to respect. End of story. So how do you respect? Brainstorming is one way because it's like everybody's throwing in their and take it seriously. Write down. Wait. Hold on.
And it's about the process. It's not necessarily like about getting a specific result. It's about this is a practice. This is a process. This is good work that is creating the ultimate
communication,
result
yeah.
of shalom.
And write down what he says. And if he's going too fast, say slow down. Do you know how that feel good? How good that feels to you? It's 10 times more for a guy. When a guy feels totally heard, remember, Rav Moshe Cordovero, all bracha comes from Shemayim through the husband and to the wife. The husband's the giver. The wife is the receiver. If you're brainstorming with him and you're writing down everything he says, wait, slow down, okay, hold on, whatever, he feels like invigorated beyond belief, and that that's a bonding thing that you can use in your favor in terms of, not because it'll help you get what you want, which it might. Shh, don't tell anybody, but it is a way of totally respecting him and having him be able to give input to the kids. He himself, listen, if he's grown up religious, he knows there deep down inside there's a part of him, his soul, his neshama certainly knows this is not exactly the best way for him to have grown. Be better if he has this lingering guilt, and some feel it much more than others. Some men feel it very painfully, some of them, whatever. So aren't in touch with it. There's a part of him that knows, and he feels like he can't contribute anymore because his contribution is sort of tainted in some way. That's his feeling. And if you completely validate his thoughts and his opinions, as Debbie's saying, and oh, okay, I hear that. I appreciate that. I understand that, how about this? What do you think of that? Let's brainstorm a little, and like that. This is the way into his heart, and to have him feel like he's making a contribution.
I'm going to give you a little suggestion for that I sometimes do actually with couples in my office, which is I'll often take a small ball and I'll tell them when they're brainstorming that when I have an idea and I'm sharing it with you, I throw it to you. Then you have to share your piece and throw it back. It stops control, meaning if one person is sitting and listening the whole time because I'm doing all the talking, the ball is sitting there, it's not going back and forth. Brainstorming is listening, hearing, seeing if you can mold it a little and send it back. So that ball going back and forth kind of assures that you both have opinions and you both appreciate each other's opinions, that it's like you said, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a back and forth. One of you shouldn't have the ball all the time.
Yeah, very good.
We're gonna add ball to our duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape a ball.
Our ladies' first kit.
Right, exactly.
Ball is
Okay. Oh,
big
wait.
on it.
And also, how are we doing on Instagram with you always tell me I cut off or
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
I messed up
you still
already.
have about 8 minutes.
Okay,
so
I'm going. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to do this 4 and 5, then I want to do the rabbi
Yeah.
thing. Okay, number 4, wife needs to be an appreciation mission. Get yourself a notebook. And you started off the show with
Gratitude.
with gratitude. Figure out.
Together. Do the gratitude book together.
Yeah, I love that,
It's a
actually.
bonding.
I love it. Okay, fine. Okay, and also, and then number 3 is think inspiration, not policeman. That's number 5. So you're not his policeman. You're not his Rebbe. You're not his, wagging your finger or whatever. You're not his policeman. Think inspiring him. Oh, there was one couple we had last year that he loved. Let me invite them more often. There's a rabbi who's in town who I know at one point he connected to. Let me see if we can go hear him speak. You're trying to get him inspired, not to control him or to be his policeman. So those are the 5.
Yeah, and then there's 2 questions we have to get to. They're so important. But a viewer asked, and this was actually something that next week, everyone, we have part 4, and it's an amazing show with Abigail, which we taped ahead of time, and she actually spoke about this in detail. So it's amazing for Debbie to be able to answer it before. But we get into screaming matches or the silent treatment, where we're not talking to each other. How can we bridge what feels like an impossible gap?
Well, the chances of that is that's a dynamic that was developed way before even this may have happened.
Oh, wow,
so you're not talking
Okay,
about
hello.
you're not talking necessarily about religious differences. You're talking about arguing styles.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
So your arguing styles may or may not have contributed to whatever's going on in the religious differences, and that's both of your arguing styles. That's 50-50. That's a clash. And I think you have to deal with your arguing styles and the way one deals with it. I think that is something that one can say. It's fine to say, we are terrible arguers. We can love well. We can get along well when we can get along well. We can have great trips to the parks with the kids. But when we argue, we can go for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks without an argument, and it's just fine. But when we argue, whether it's this or anything else, that couple is doing
Yeah.
that on other things too.
Yeah.
If it's this or anything else, and we argue, we could kill each other, either killing each other in silence or in the way that we argue. I think to say to a spouse, we argue terribly. We don't know how to argue. It's important to realize we don't know how to argue because it very much impacts our life. We have to learn how to disagree, and we have to learn how to argue. That's a really important reason to go to therapy, and sometimes it's actually short term. It's not even that long term. Right. But how do we learn how to better respect each other when we differ? I'm going to take a guess that in situations that are as dramatic as that he learned how to argue in his family, and she learned how to argue in her family, and the way they're arguing together has a lot of history to it, right? So I think saying not, I'm miserable, therefore we're going into therapy, or I'm going to threaten him, or da-da-da, but to say, we don't know how to disagree. We don't know how to argue. I really want us to go to therapy together. Let's find someone we both can agree on. We both
Do you
feel
have standing on one foot, and we have two other points we want to cover, but standing on one foot, how do you argue better? What are some of the key mistakes, and how do they turn them around? That's a whole other class. But
Right.
No joke, we're bringing her back.
There you go.
I need that class.
right. No,
I
but
need
no,
that class.
it is a lot. But one thing is, are you listening? Because generally, if we're listening to argue, then we're going to argue, right? We're just listening to argue. We're not taking it in.
Right, you're listening to respond.
I'm listening
Formulating
to
your
respond.
response.
Am I listening and taking it in? The other thing is, am I activated? Meaning, am I just so
He's
angry?
pushing
so-
the buttons.
Triggered.
Right.
What is
you know.
activated? What do you mean?
Yeah, so that whatever he's saying is pushing my own buttons.
It's like triggered, right?
It's triggered.
Right.
Am I just responding in that way? Stop and even ask yourself, am I proud of the way I'm communicating? How do I feel about
That's
how
too
I'm
hard,
communicating?
Debbie, right?
No,
That's
but
too hard.
How
to
do
ask it,
I
right?
feel? Because sometimes we look at ourselves and we go, "Oh my gosh, I don't,
Did I just
don't
say
want
that?
to
Am I
yell
doing
like
this?
that,
Isn't
or
right?
I don't want to speak like that, or I don't want to throw something, or I don't want to slam a cabinet. I don't want to do those things. I don't want to stomp up the stairs.
It's
I don't
not
want
okay
to be
to slam a
silenced.
cabinet. Oh,
No, I don't want to.
joking.
It was interesting. I was talking to a couple, and they had children, and this woman said to me that her daughter-in-law said to her, "I really resent." She said it lovingly. "I resent that you didn't teach my husband to communicate when he's upset. You taught him to be silent. So he doesn't yell at me and he doesn't get upset with me. He doesn't. But he doesn't communicate when he's upset. He gets silent. And he learned that from both of you. When you both get upset, you get silent. You give each other the silent treatment. And it can go on. And that's what he learned. So
How is her relationship with her mother-in-law?
I
Come on,
think her
maybe she
mother-in-law-
just did great therapy right
I think
there.
her
Yeah,
mother-in-law was appreciative of it. But I'm just saying that if
Wow.
just one little comment, let's say husband says, "No, I don't want to go into therapy." I would still recommend that you go and you tell him, "I'm going into couples therapy. I prefer that you come in and we learn together. But I don't want to argue like this. It's so not."
What about telling him, I want to build a toolbox?
Right.
Instead of focusing, I don't want, say, here's what I do want.
Yeah.
I want a toolbox so that we can do this well. I've seen people
Go to
spar
Hamawaya,
and go
that's
at it and
awesome.
do it successfully, like
Right.
bosses.
Yeah.
And I want to be bosses at arguing with you.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's
So finding a toolbox.
how many seconds do we have left?
No, it's okay. We have like 2 on my what's it called? But
Well, then I have something I want to end the
okay,
show
good.
with.
So,
okay,
yeah,
so
we'll leave.
Okay,
There's so
okay.
many questions.
Okay,
and
so
we'll
hold on.
try to
Do
deal
the
with
Rabbi. You asked the question. What if can
the
you
last
go,
one
can
is
you,
that it's the
can you-
husband's if the husband has a rabbi that he's close to, are you able to turn to that rabbi?
Because then he
for
says, "Oh
guidance?
my, I've asked this to him, and they said I could never do that because it would embarrass him. Then the rabbi would know. Then it would
No,
be
no,
on
a
the-
smart rabbi is hopefully not going to sit there and is
Tell
going to
the
be
husband.
smooth about how he does it. But
Right.
turning to that rabbi who's a powerful force.
I don't
in
think
that
there's
sense.
only one answer to that. It also, like you say, it really does depend on your husband and your husband's, because let's say that rabbi really is the last relationship that he has. And then you go in and impact it.
Right.
Are you going to, is he then going to say, okay,
That's
so
it.
now you're controlling him
Right.
too, very nice,
Okay.
I'm out of
The
here.
last straw.
On the other hand, if it's something that your husband might find supportive ultimately, then maybe it would be different. So I think you really have to think carefully.
Use your beaver.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
we do.
go. 'Cause we've
Okay,
got 1:37.
here we go. We would like to thank you very much for coming on our show.
thank
Debbie
you.
Foster, little ladies talk show mug.
Thank
Yes.
you.
By the way, every time you drink from it, you can think of us.
And,
Okay.
Hello, see, when you come
So-
on our show, you get something, a special
And
gift.
Gina's going to be very mad. She was on the show.